We just about ready. Getting my mind right, my info right. Make sure stream's looking good. Make sure I'm spiritually ready. I'm gonna interrupt Louie. Get this started. Whoops. I don't know, that would happen. Well, I'm just gonna fade that out right now. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. I think we're ready. Monday quarantine stream. Monday audio issues. I'm gonna turn that down so I don't get too much feedback. I need a little bit of feedback so I kind of know what it sounds like. Monday quarantine stream, starting a little late. I mean, not that late. What, like 10 minutes or whatever, 15 minutes. Not that bad. What's going on, everybody? Yeah, I don't know. I just had weird audio. I've had some issues with this setup, trying to stream from the laptop. Today was so I have streaming through Streamlabs, but I'm running my audio through Cubase so that I can put like compression and stuff like that so that it sounds, decent. For some reason, it was like I would open up Cubase and then my sample rate or something would just drop. Like if I was listening to something, it would drop like an octave or something, and then there would just be no more playback. I couldn't play anything, like a YouTube or whatever. There was no sound when I would try to adjust the volume on my desktop. And I just had to restart several times, and then it worked. But yeah, it's Monday, Sleepy Monday, getting into the summer. Father's Day yesterday. Hopefully that was a positive experience for everyone out there. If not, whether it was an experience, maybe it was just a Sunday, whatever. We all know what it can be like. Monday. Any announcements? Kind of. No, nothing special happening. I mean, I'm still kind of working on the same stuff. The thing I was working on last week, I mean, it's something that involved like poetry, lyrics, words, and so I, especially when like for me, like I feel pretty strongly about like my lyric writing and stuff like that in terms of like my ability. Like I'm not gonna say it's always like amazing, but it's generally I think pretty good, honestly. I mean, at least it's not a mess, like there's an effect, whether or not it's somebody's cup of tea or whatever. But at the same time, I always like to shroud the message in other things, and I like to layer. It's not the words. It's never like necessarily the words like just in the spotlight. It's the layering of everything else and the music and all that stuff. That's what the full message is. But when you're doing something where it's like musically very simple, and the sort of word choice is more pedestrian, and it's about like sort of like the elegance of simplicity, and it's more about just like the exact like the way you use the meter, and the way you're landing on certain consonants, and you're blending in with certain vowels and things like that, where it's very much like there's like a certain technical aspect to it. I don't know. It just took me a long time to figure that out, and I just kind of like, and in the end I was just like, well, whatever. Maybe it could be better if I thought about it more. Maybe but whatever. So a little thing I'm working on should be out eventually. That's about it. Other stuff I'm working on, yeah. Different video ideas that usually it's going to be the simpler stuff that'll end up being finished first. And I've got another larger project I was hoping to work on more, but I don't know. Shit happens, and I don't have a lot of time. So we'll see. I'm being very cryptic, but I mean, I guess hopefully you'll see it eventually, whatever I'm talking about. But yeah, working on stuff, trying to put stuff, doing the streams twice a week and trying to put some stuff out there here and there. My weekly thing that I want to get back on track doing, even though I only did one, so it was really not that weekly. But getting into that. Yeah, but that's that. That's kind of what's going on. Hope everyone's doing okay. It's not been too hot. There's been many fireworks every evening, basically, since like Memorial Day. Some people making some fun connections. We'll see. I mean, anytime, you think something is too crazy or too stupid to be true, and then like 50 years after something happens, you see like a declassified like CIA document about like they tried to put CBD in your Cheerios to suppress people from, I don't know, becoming incels or something. I don't know. Reality is many times stranger than fiction, so I don't know. Sometimes even if there's some weird conspiracy that makes sense to people, the true thing is probably even weirder than that, So I don't know if you've seen people talking about the fireworks and stuff like that. It's kind of sus, but whatever. It's been all right. So off the top of the show, I was thinking about like doing like segments, just because like whenever I start one of these, it's like the afternoon. I've had lunch. I'm like, I don't talk to people. I only talk to like my girlfriend. That's pretty much the only person I speak to these days. So trying to have this like expansive, it's not even, I mean, obviously it's not even a discussion. I'm just talking to a screen. So it's more like a soapbox or a lecture. I'm trying to be coherent about something where I'm trying to piece together all this different stuff. It's usually a little less coherent at the start. So I was thinking about like how to make these streams. One, it's easier for me if it's like I know what I'm gonna plug in this segment. I'm gonna do this, and this segment I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna talk about these things because I know I bounce back and forth. Sometimes when I do these streams, I'm like talking about something. Sometimes I'm practicing. Sometimes I'm writing. Sometimes I'm producing or whatever. But I don't know. I know doing things more consistently and more regularly is that's how you build your audience. That's why I don't have an audience. At least I don't know. Seems every stream I get a couple viewers, but I don't know if they're real or not, because no one ever says anything. That's just fine by me. Again, I'm mostly doing this for myself anyway, so whatever. But just doing these segments just makes it easier, so I don't have to think too much. So, with that being said, for our segment off the top, the shoutouts and the FUs today. So last Thursday, I shouted out a couple different things. Longshoremen of the West Coast shut down every West Coast port, I believe, for that day, which is amazing. It's crazy, right? Like, how many billions of dollars of commerce, rely on ports off the west coast of the United States. And these workers show that they're willing and able to make that happen. Now it was it wasn't like a wildcat strike or anything like that. It was something planned. It was something that they was tied into something that was part of their union contract. But they got a lot of showing of support out there. A lot of people, not necessarily the workers themselves, are out there supporting. And it is a flex. It is a show of power by a very militant union committed to anti-racism and things of that nature. Showing out for the cause and showing the power they have over this economic system now. I don't think they were necessarily maybe they're demanding things. I mean, I don't know about any concessions that were born up as a result of that. But I shouted that out. That's cool. That's great. I love it. And definitely, just reminding the masters that they don't have all the power in the world. And hopefully, if it comes down to it, they'll be able to mobilize like that again, perhaps for more sustained action. But today, want to shout out another group, the New York State Nurse Association. Did I get that right? Yeah, New York State Nurses Association. I don't believe there's any action connected to this. I mean, I think nurses, it's more difficult for them to walk out en masse because they're obviously their patients are very vulnerable, and they have a different role in society, I think. But let me just give the details. I'm reading here from the New York Daily News. State Nurses Union wants New York to divert money away from the NYPD to help address racial disparities in healthcare at hospitals that primarily serve the city's poorest patients. The New York State Nurses Association, which represents 42,000 nurses, is also calling on the state government to increase the tax rate on the ultra-wealthy and to create a tax on second and third homes to better fund public and safety net hospitals. The call for increased funding, outlined in an internal memo obtained by the Daily News, is in response to statistics that show Black and Hispanic patients typically fare worse when it comes to healthcare outcomes in general and with coronavirus specifically. This quote from the NYSNA president, Judy Sheridan Gonzalez: "The working class and the middle class and the poor are getting shafted." Absolutely true. I think they're clear on their demands as it goes in this article. Let me see. To fix that, NYNSA is now pushing for increased funding on two fronts, diverting $2 billion from jails, prosecutors' offices, and the NYPD to hospitals, and generating more than $30 billion in new revenue through taxing the rich. The demands come as city and state policymakers are facing down gaping revenue shortfalls brought on by the coronavirus. I mean, yeah, excellent. We're talking about essential workers, nurses who are helping to, in the wake of failures of our government to provide for people and allow them the protection that they need, whether it be financial stability or quicker and more decisive action at the start of all this to limit large gatherings, close businesses, tamp down on travel and things like that. These nurses such as these, are the ones who are picking up the pieces and trying to keep, society together and keep people alive, and risking their own lives in the process. And these demands are, they cut to the point. They know what the money is there. They know where the money is. And they know that they need the money to make this work. And that this lack of funding and this lack of support by the state is adding fuel to the fire in terms of number of people who are suffering needlessly during this pandemic. So shouts out to them. I think I just saw this today. Yeah, June 22nd. So I don't know if that's developed, how that's developing. I think Cuomo's kind of a, he's a coward too. He's a hypocrite too. And he's got a lot of deaths on his hands. But it's not too late to turn this thing around. It's just, good luck, It's great that this massive Nurses Association is coming out like this, 42,000 members. That's some decent muscle behind the message. So we'll see. People love to celebrate the healthcare workers and all that. And hopefully they can put their money where their mouth is. People all around the country are mobilizing, these protests, Black Lives Matter and things like that. But there's a very, I think people are generally pretty conscious about sort of overlying issues. And we sort of talked about that last stream, about the connections between all these different communities and why these protests are so widespread. Part of it has to do with people's conditions because of the pandemic. But a lot of these were underlying issues that were just sort of brought to light by the current conditions. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, that's awesome. These people are great. They literally saving lives, literally risking their own for not much personal reward, and they understand what the issue is systematically, and they understand what needs to be done, and they're making demands of government leaders and so on, to again put their money where their mouth is. So Godspeed to them. Today, so that's my shout out. I wanted to get like a soundboard or some shit, but I mean, like, we'll see. Maybe I'll just keep this low effort. For the FU, we're saying fuck you to the erosion of the erosion of the semblance of democracy in America. How about that? The absolute destruction of the idea that we live in a substantive democracy where the needs and wants of its citizens matter at all. I mean, as I say that, I could honestly be referring to anything. I could be referring to the massive police state, the bloated military, corruption and money in politics, the complete subjugation in our economic lives by wealthy capitalists and so forth. But today, I mean, I'm kind of talking about all of that. I mean, all this shit. They killed a kid out here, maybe a couple cities over. This 18-year-old security guard at Auto Shop Andres. They fucking shot him and they destroyed all the cameras in the place. And obviously they're saying like, oh, he had a gun or some whatever. I mean, man, these are some brutal people. They will look after their own to a massive fault, and they will, beat you and kill you, and whether it's happening across the country or right in your backyard, man. But it's not necessarily what I'm referring to today. I guess kind of is, but I mean, I'm talking about just the massive level of disenfranchising coinciding with the quarantine, the pandemic. I mean, honestly, I don't think there's been a legitimate election in this country since like mid-March or early March. Every primary, every local election since then has been like, do you want to exercise your right to vote in a democracy? Well, you have to risk killing your grandpa if you want to do that. And people have gotten sick at some of these places, waiting around fucking 10 hours polling places because they have all these issues. Right now, I'm responding to the fact that so Kentucky's primary tomorrow on Tuesday the 23rd is typically they have 3,700 polling locations for their primary. Tomorrow they will be down to 200. That's less than 10%. That is absolutely insane. Let me read from this Washington Post article. Fewer than 200 polling places will be open for voters in Kentucky's primary Tuesday, down from 3,700 in a typical election year. Amid a huge influx in requests for mail-in ballots, some voters still have not received theirs days before they must be turned in, and turnout is expected to be higher than in past primaries because of a suddenly competitive fight for the Democratic Senate nomination. Shout out to, hold on, I gotta make sure I get this guy's name right. Because, Charles Booker is the man going up, trying to take out Mitch McConnell. But he's got to take the Democratic nomination first. And this is just pure voter suppression. This is literal disenfranchisement. And I mean, between the brutal retaliation of the police state, whether it's, police gassing and beating people and shooting them with rubber bullets, or literally killing people, or spying on protesters, or arresting people 3 days after they went to a protest and stuff like that, and the media, trying to trash protesters while at the same time taking every single cop for their word, and then having to walk it back like 3 days later. But that combined with, this literal, again, I'll say, electoral politics is not going to solve everything. If all you do is vote and go home, I mean, it's better than doing nothing. But in a lot of cases, it kind of does nothing. Because the people you vote for are not necessarily beholden to you. Because for the most part, we're not, as a population, we're not really engaged in politics in that way anyway. Partially because there is some part of most people that understand that there's just this emptiness to the process, because it's not very meaningful. It's not going to have a very meaningful effect on their lives, at least, in most people's perception, which is why most people don't vote. But not even being satisfied with just enfranchising people in their spirit, we have literal disenfranchisement through closing polling places, or just basically making it inconvenient and during a pandemic, absolutely dangerous to try to vote. So, fuck you to the erosion of, the great American democracy. And honestly, I don't know what this looks like in the future, because, man, what a, again, have we had a single legitimate election in the past few months? Probably not. But I don't know. What can we do in this situation? I don't know. But anyway, let's move on to the rest of the show. That's not the subject du jour this time. I mean, I'm not like a election expert anyway, at least in terms of the apparatus of having elections, and the relative strength of our democracy in terms of how much the people's will is represented in their government. Which, I mean, I guess I kind of, I speak about that pretty often, about how those are generally out of step. But people are complicated in their beliefs. If you ask them what they actually believe, you get a ball of contradictions, and that's kind of most people. If you're like me and you're just kind of a nerd, and you try to follow this stuff, most people are relatively incoherent. But that's besides the point of actually being allowed to participate in a democracy, because that's kind of our one conceit of autonomy, of any kind of influence over the system that governs our lives, that you can vote, and enough people vote, then you could sort of change the face of, who's ruling over you, or whatever. But they try to take that away too. It's just a slow erosion through all these techniques. Originally, I was gonna make this this stream about you know, the sort of the struggle writ large, the fight, and how to take it from playing defense all the time to, you know, only reacting when bad things happen to you directly, to playing offense and trying to get ahead of the game. But I decided today I don't want to talk strategy because I don't know. That's not my wheelhouse. It's something I'm thinking about. That's really all I'm doing, is I'm just talking about things that I'm thinking about. But I decided to go a different route just because a lot of different things have been on my mind. So today, you've read the title. Maybe if you're on YouTube, you read the description. Soul survival. How do we live? You know, how do we go beyond just existing when there's all these different things just kind of wearing us down? I'll talk a little bit about what my experience has been, kind of what I think about the whole thing, and what I think will work, and what makes things worse. Because, you know, either you're at home, you're working all day, and it's wearing you out, or you're just sitting around doing nothing. You're on social media, looking at people argue about stupid shit, looking at, you know, the 600th video of a cop beating up some old guy or whatever. You're reading about some horrible thing that's some horrible law that's trying to get passed or whatever, or some sort of war or genocide somewhere. You know, there's kind of the echo chamber of despair that can all become. Or you are an essential worker who didn't want to work. Maybe you're working at a grocery store or something like that, and you're thinking to yourself every day, man, they're gonna kill me, you know, for this minimum wage job. I'm gonna fucking be sacrificed on the altar of the economy for fucking $8-10 an hour or some shit. And you live daily with the feeling that the society you live in sees you as basically worthless. And you're called essential because your duty is essential to keeping things running smoothly, but your value as a human being is not worth that. You know, ain't worth more than $10 an hour, basically. And that can, you know, shit, that's fucking depressing. So for whatever reason, you know, this shit's wearing you down. And I think there is something. I think there's a healing aspect to the current moment. You know, we got people out on the streets for the last few weeks. Everyone's, you know, for the most part, a lot of people are still talking about protests and Black Lives Matter. People are still tearing down statues, still trying to get their politicians, local governments to hold police accountable. I mean, as many people are saying, you know, a lot of these cops still aren't getting charged, not even fired or suspended, you know. But there's a certain healing aspect, I think, going out and doing this. You're in your little bubble, you're stuck at home, see all this shit happening, and you're like, I can't fucking do anything. If I go outside, I'm gonna die, or I'm gonna kill somebody's grandma with corona, and I just feel terrible. I'm so mad. All this stuff is going on, I can't do anything about it. Boom, now we're out there, going on the streets, yelling, and we're feeling a sense of connection with the people around us, which we haven't necessarily had these past few months. I mean, even if you are quarantined with other people, which I am, it's not the same. You know, it's not like you don't always get to choose who you're isolated with. And even if you do, maybe you don't always want to be around the same people literally all the time. Or maybe you're alone and you don't interact with anybody. You're basically in solitary confinement. Except you have, a phone that could tell you all the horrible things that are happening around the world at any given moment. Anytime you feel like just, I gotta know what's happening. I gotta stay connected, and it's all terrible. Now you can go out there and feel connection with people and feel a righteous, something. That doesn't necessarily, that's a relief. That's some reprieve. And I talked about that last stream about how demonstrations and protests are nice. It's a good, like, for morale. You can feel connected to people and you can feel good. But it's not necessarily the next step after a protest is not like, okay, then they start fixing everything. That's just the spontaneous, expression of collective will, and it's really only as strong as it is focused. And these aren't always super focused. I mean, there's a slogan which is nice, but the slogan is very easily co-opted. I mentioned that as well. Painting Black Lives Matter on the fucking main street. Meanwhile, your police department is still 50% of the city budget. I mean, and they're like, we'll have them read a fucking book about some bears that teaches them how to stop being racist. And that's going to cost the city an extra $100 million or whatever. Like, it's easily co-opted. So it's only as effective as the level of focus and the longevity of the movement. Not to say that people should stop going out. I mean, I have been refraining from doing that just because, I don't want to jeopardize anybody around me. My family has been interacting amongst each other, mostly because everyone can pretty much stay at home, work remotely and stuff like that, and pretty much only interacting between the family. So because of that, I'm trying to, at least that's what I'm telling myself. Maybe I'm just a little bitch or something, but yeah, I don't want to go out there and take that risk. But I mean, I would, like Cornel West said a few weeks ago, thank God there's people out there. Like, and I say this, I'm not religious, but I'm quoting him. Like, thank God that people care enough that they have some sense of, like, the value of human life, that they're out there, they're angry, it would be, man, it would be such a catastrophe if nobody cared, if we were just like, people are gonna die. That's the big worry, right, for the pandemic. The reason things are opening up is not because it's safe. It's opening up because we're just kind of getting used to it, right? But that's the issue, right? That's a temporary fix. Getting out there, yelling and stuff like that. I mean, if I'm not going to say that hasn't helped move the narrative forward, and that isn't helping to gain concessions from people in power. But on an individual level, unless you're continuing things beyond that, and I don't necessarily just mean like donating and posting about it. I mean, like, what are you going to do with your flesh and bones, What are you going to contribute? Having that real commitment, that's what I mean by longevity. So that issue, the issue of those terrible feelings, isolation, helplessness. You have this outlet in, protest, maybe even direct action. Maybe you're fucking, you're splaying your body in front of a police department driveway so they can't send the cruisers out or whatever. I don't know, you're chaining yourself to. I mean, these fucking right wingers know direct action. They'll come out here with their fucking rifles and threaten to shoot people for tearing down a statue of Papa John's or some shit. These insane people, they have the same anxieties and the same feelings, and their outlet is like, oh shit, these protesters are wilding, so I'm gonna come out with my baseball bat and high five some cops while I beat up a college student and shoot somebody's aunt with my AR-15. That's their expression. Going to Trump rallies and not wearing a mask. That's not fulfilling their lives. I mean, but better than posting about it, I guess. Although I don't know. So what can we do? If that's not the fix, I mean, if you're doing that, I mean, not the fucking assholes shooting people for, spray painting a Christopher Columbus statue. Those people should be exiled, excommunicated from society. Or I don't know. We could fix a lot of the material conditions that cause these social, disparities and this rub between people. That'd be a start. I wouldn't solve everything, of course, but that'd be a start. But if you're out there holding up signs, you're getting beaten by cops, awesome. You're cool. Thank you. What can we do outside that? How do we keep ourselves from burning out and just feeling totally, just going through the days, going through the motions, feeling debilitated, feeling unmotivated, and just kind of wasting away. How do we get around that? Because, under the previous circumstances, the normal circumstances, you go to work 5 days or whatever a week, come home, watch your Netflix, have a beer, find some intimacy with other people, hang out on the weekends, watch a movie, do drugs or something, I don't know. We seek these comforts as a reprieve from the stress of the day-to-day. But now it's like all you do is like, if every day is just sitting there watching Netflix and smoking a joint, like your relief from your normal stressors is just like, that's just what you do, and you just become numb to it. You can go online and try to learn things and post about it, but I mean, it's not moving the needle in any direction. The stuff that you normally do as a distraction, now it's just all you get to do. And that's not great either. I mean, if there was something of meaning in our lives that we got to spend time on, which is basically, I'm just sort of getting into to what I'm going to talk about. Like, sitting around playing video games, drinking a beer, hanging out with friends and stuff like that. I enjoy those things. I don't get tired of those things. Maybe I want to play a different video game or drink a different beer or hang out at a different place. Those things on their own, it's fine. It's fun. The issue is the feeling of listlessness and aimlessness. We're not going anywhere, not contributing anything, not building towards anything of any meaning to us personally. Just kind of existing in this empty state, and withering away. Each day is the same as the last. So, I kind of gave away the answer in that explanation. I mean, let me go back to sorry, I'm looking at my notes just to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah. Basically, there's no breaking the cycle. There's no escaping the monotony. There's no little relief from your day-to-day grind, because it's all just the same thing. So whether you're, beating your meat or getting high all day, that might sound fun, on a weekend when you have a long week. But if that's just what you're doing every day for like 3 months in a row, you're gonna burn out. So, how do you get to the point where you're crafting meaning in this new space? And the answer is it's kind of the same for everybody, but it might be different based on what you were doing before. Because for me, spending long periods isolated at home, not seeing people, not interacting with people, not doing work, not engaging in any meaningful contribution to society, sounds like I've had many periods of that in the last few years of my life as a freelance musician. There'll be time periods or like a couple of few months where I'm relatively busy. Maybe I'm working every weekend or whatever, or I'm on a gig for a couple weeks or a month or so, and I'm busy and it's cool. And then I'll go 2-3 months where like I might have a gig here and there. I'm practicing every day, but really mostly I'm just staying at home, trying not to spend too much money, because I need to sit on the money that I made those other couple months, because I'm not doing much for these couple months. So I've had these situations where I have to, I have to go back and forth between being really busy and just doing nothing, sitting around playing video games, watching anime or whatever. And you learn something in those moments. You have to learn how to deal with that, because everyone's been experiencing this in sort of like an elevated way for the past few months, because they can't go places. At least like when I was like sitting at home, I was like, I could go out. There's a show. I could go out, get some drinks, hang out, or I could meet a friend, or I can go on hikes. No, I can't really do that. No, we can't really do that stuff. But I still, even though it's a little more strict now like there's like an external pressure to not do these things. My familiarity with that situation still helps me. And honestly, at the start of quarantine, I was living it up, because now I could do stuff that I normally had to do, except I don't have to feel guilty that, I don't have to feel guilty about, if I wasn't doing gigs or if I wasn't going out and spending money. Honestly, it was very freeing for me, because I just got to stay at home, and I started getting unemployment. So I was pretty much taken care of, in terms of like my physical needs, in order to live. And like I've had this pressure was lifted of what I'm supposed to be doing, because there's only one thing I could do: stay at home and do whatever I was going to do, because to do otherwise would be irresponsible, unless I was quote unquote an essential worker, in which case fuck it. We'll squeeze every last bit of your vitality out to make sure the market doesn't dip. But yeah, it was sort of freeing that I didn't have to do certain things. and I didn't need an excuse for why I wasn't doing certain things. There's just only one thing I could do. And honestly, I was pretty much fine with that, even though like it was like, yeah, I get there's all this crazy shit happening outside, and it really pisses me off. Sometimes it's very depressing, but I didn't have to deal with the heat of normal life and worrying about my career and all these other things, all the normal anxieties. Now I just had to worry about if I was gonna get a disease, which psychologically was less stressful for me, being that I could stay at home. If I had to work, I mean, obviously I'd probably be freaking out, or I'd just be like, wow, like they don't give a fuck about me, I guess. So I guess part of it is the framing of your level of comfort with it, and the sort of way you can frame it in your mind that it does free you in a certain sense, from worrying about like your job and things like that if you don't have to work, or if you can work from home. I mean, really, I'm sure a massive contribution to the reason that people are out in the streets, with such numbers and with such longevity, is the fact that a lot of people are not working right now, and they have the time and the energy. I mean, you could apply it to that, which is sort of a expression of the righteous anger, or you could, build Gundam or something, you can express that energy in different ways. But the fact is that the pressure is from the normal day-to-day is gone, and so you have your time and your energy. But if all you're gonna do is just fucking consume media and social media and ice cream and shit like that, like, you're just gonna feel terrible, There's a reason where people have that drive, that I gotta do something. Something that's compelling them to go out there and do something that they normally wouldn't. It's funny because I normally would be out there. I mean, that sounds like a lame, yeah, I would be out there on the street if there wasn't a pandemic, but there is, so I'm being responsible. No, I'm not. I'm not trying to be like that. I mean, genuinely, like, yeah, hell yeah, I'd love to be out there, but I have my reasons. Maybe part of what's allowing me to reel it back and try to be more responsible, is because I have my other outlets, and I have my own sense of comfort with the situation. Obviously, partially because of the security that I'm afforded with my situation, my like material situation. So beyond finding comfort with the situation, what do we do? Where do we take this energy? Because you can be all zen about it, but you still have this. There's still something there that you feel like you have. You understand you literally live in a society, and you don't want to. We don't like this feeling of isolation and alienation. We don't like this feeling of listlessness and helplessness and uselessness. We don't like those feelings. So what we need to practice is a level of focus and commitment. Focus, commitment. Not on posting, Not entirely on video games, maybe a little on video games, but again, I'm pulling from the sort of grill pill philosophy of the Christ man himself. Push bomb. But I mean, you have to focus on something that's in your, in your control, something you can control, something that you can develop, something you can commit to, something related to a sense of personal achievement and personal growth. I've been practicing, I've been writing, I've written more than I have in the past few months than I have in the past few years. I haven't shared all of it, but I've been doing it. I've been doing these streams, which I've never done before, and I'm doing them regularly, which in terms of my creative stuff, I've never done anything regularly, really. And I'm working on more. I don't finish everything, but I'm still working on stuff. And that gives me direction and purpose. Well, it allows me a sense of progress. Because I'm juggling all these different things, there's a sense of this up and down. I mean, that was one of the tough things to deal with in terms of my music career. Like, in terms of my skill levels, like, it's music is cerebral and emotional, but it's also very physical, and technical. And it's sort of like if there's a muscle you don't use too often. I mean, literally sometimes it's the case that you don't use a muscle often enough. If you're sitting at your computer 12 hours a day and then you try to run a marathon, you would probably die. And it's kind of like that with playing an instrument for me, you might have your baseline, but the top end is gonna fade if you don't focus on it. Especially certain skills, specific skills on your tool belt. If you ignore those, depending on how much time you've put into building it up, again, you're gonna have your baseline, but the sort of the top end of that, you're probably gonna lose. So I've experienced those ups and downs with my skills and stuff before, and with my career. Again, those busy times where it's like, oh, I'm busy, wow. And then the times where it's just flatline, I'm doing shit. And so I kind of experienced that too. I'm literally working on all these different things, and I've been working on stuff that I have just no experience in, or just very little like patience for, trying to learn new things. And it's a lot of up and down. It's a lot of, juggling different things and trying to make sure that nothing, it's almost like I'm giving myself the same responsibilities and anxieties as I would under normal circumstances, which I try to balance so that I'm not like, as I mentioned this on a different stream, that burning out under these circumstances is fatal. Because you don't get to go and you don't get to travel somewhere and become re-inspired in a new environment. You don't get to go and recuperate. You don't get to take a break from what you're doing every day. Because what you're doing every day is just here, Now, as everything opens up, as I mentioned, because people stop caring or whatever, or they decide that, I think we've beaten down their will enough to that they'll accept the whole, sacrificing grandma for the sake of the market, or grandpa, or maybe both. Maybe now we'll, everything will go back to normal, and we'll just accept a level of death happening all around us. But we get to go eat at restaurants and have a beer and get a haircut. So what? Is it that bad? But if not, you got nothing. You got to stay at home and be burnt out and just do nothing and not have any respite. So there's that aspect too. Focusing on things, trying to improve on things, but in a constructive way and in not because social media. I mean, should be almost a point on its own. The detriment of social media. I mean, really, I think about, I've never been like a terribly prolific creator, but there was a time, my first few years at college, maybe I was on like Facebook and MySpace or something, and some forums back when that was a thing. But I wasn't on like Instagram and Twitter and all this other stuff, caring about what people I don't know say about things. And spending, half my day on that or on YouTube or whatever. And I was creating a lot of stuff. A few things a month for some of those periods. And I just haven't been able to recapture that. And I honestly think part of it is the level of distraction that social media allows. Because I don't know. I think I might have like ADHD or something like that. I don't know. But ever since I was young, I've always felt like my mind just kind of fucking a million miles an hour. Always on. Just always ping back and forth. I mean, when I was young, we had the internet, we had video games and stuff like that, but it wasn't like I could have my tablet in bed and like, feed off and read Twitter for 2 hours or whatever before I try to go to sleep. Although I did always have issues with insomnia. It's not just because of technology. But at night, I would sit there, little 6-year-old, 7-year-old me, stare up at the ceiling and think about the world, think about the universe, think about morality. I'm not even joking. Things have always been stirring in here. And that's part of what has motivated my creative side. Is just I get an idea or I want to express something. I'm like, okay, shit, let's do it. Like I have the means to create something tangible with those thoughts as a musician, as an artist. And so there was a time where I was doing that fairly regularly. And part of it I was motivated by a desire for attention. I knew there were the circles I was in, I knew I would get ears on my stuff. And now I don't really feel that. I know my friends will listen to my stuff, and I appreciate that. But you kind of want random people who don't know you to care about your art, That's kind of more satisfying, unfortunately. But part of it is also just that it's so much easier to distract myself these days. I didn't get a smartphone until like 2013 or something like that. I couldn't be on fucking Facebook and shit all the time. I just sit there with my thoughts or wear headphones and pretend like I was doing something. Now I anytime I feel anything, it doesn't matter what it is, and I just I need to do something. Got my phone, I literally have 2 computers on in front of me right now. Distractions don't help. And it kind of wears you out too. You almost feel like compelled. I mean, that's what these things are designed to do. They're designed to compel you to return and interact and engage with these platforms, even if it doesn't do shit for you. I mean, have I gotten a little bit out of social media? Sure. I've gotten a couple gigs. I've made a couple connections. But in terms of work put in to, reward put out, that's a crazy ass ratio. I mean, not even minimum wage, It's almost like I'm paying to punish myself. with distraction and anxiety inducing content. So there's that, like, not giving into that. But social media has been sort of a motivator in some of the things that I've been doing. Because I've been motivated to put out content on Instagram, motivated to have regular stuff on my YouTube, motivated to put stuff on my Bandcamp or whatever. You know, I sort of center some of the things I'm creating around the impact on social media. And I've kind of been doing that for the last 10 years, but it's different now because it's so much more wrapped up in my life in a way that it wasn't 10 years ago. And that's why I've been feeling the need to keep a certain level of balance, to where, you know, with these streams, I'm not sweating it too much. I do a little research. I think about these things before I talk. It's not this whole fucking production. I mean, look at it. It looks like shit. It sounds good, but it looks terrible. I'm not putting a lot of effort into thinking too much about the streams, or, you know, who's gonna watch them, because nobody's watching them. I mean, some of you guys are. But yeah. You know, I'm trying to have a certain amount of distance from these platforms because I know it's just a platform. I don't want it to run my life. And I don't want to burn out, like I said. 1, find your comfort with the situation. 2, find something you can commit to, something you can work on, something that encourages your own personal growth, something that gives you some level of fulfillment. And 3, just be chill about it. Don't put all your anxious energy into the thing that you're trying to do to, you know, get your mind right, because you're just going to fuck it up for yourself. It doesn't have to be creation. I mean, it could be. I mean, learn shit. Read a book. I've been taking in analysis and stuff like YouTube and podcasts because I've gotten used to that and it's pretty easy. But I know I should read. I haven't read Capital. I should read Capital, even though it's not gonna be fun. It's like reading a fucking textbook. But it's gonna, you know, I'm gonna learn. And I should actually research some history about shit. You know, I've been learning a little bit about, you know, people talking about the civil rights movement in the 60s. I know a little bit about that stuff. I know a little bit about recreation after the Civil War and stuff like that. Reformation, sorry. But I'm not a fucking expert. I couldn't even tell a super compelling story about these things. I only know little tidbits. I could strengthen my knowledge, and I would grow in that sense, and I would become stronger in my conviction as I strengthen my knowledge. I was going to talk about that when this stream was originally going to be about strategy, in terms of political strategy. That we have to know our shit. We ought to be reading books. We ought to be reading our history. We ought to be talking with other people, opening up our perspectives, enriching our own views. But even outside that context, even if it's not for, you're not using it in order to enrich yourself as an actor in the system that you're participating in order to enhance your efficacy in the political realm or whatever. Even if you're just doing it to, you know, build yourself up, enrich your own life, that's fantastic too. That's something to do with your time. And that's different. I mean, I read articles and stuff, but it's different when you have to focus and commit on something. Commit to something. And you're not just being bombarded by information. You're not at the mercy of information. You are taking the time to understand something. You're not just riding the easy train to enlightenment town. That doesn't work that way. It takes reflection, and it takes research and conversation. No shortcut to understanding. For me, I got all these little different tidbits of information over the course of years, and that sort of helped me build up, what I know and how I see things today. That's sort of fortified by my own experiences. But I know that having this fully realized, fully examined perspective that you can only get through certain mediums, there's no substitute for that, really. I mean, I'm not saying you have to fucking read books to be an enlightened individual, but it helps. It's better than reading posts, So, taking the opportunity to become a more complete person. And then if you're really concerned about, living in a just world and contributing to that, to bringing justice into the world, that will enhance your efficacy in that realm too, because there's no instant gratification when it comes to achieving justice. When you see these, I talked about some of the Supreme Court victories that we had recently, but it's not like an instantaneous moment or it's just like suddenly a good thing happens. I mean, that was a result of years of work, decades of cultural change, and on-the-ground work by people who are committed and educated and fortified in their beliefs and their convictions. And that is the fourth or the fifth thing for me, is that there needs to be a reckoning within yourself, understanding why you're doing these things and finding your North Star that guides you no matter what's right in front of you at the moment. The thing that tells you you're headed in the right or the wrong direction, even though you're not exactly sure how it's going to turn out if you make this decision or that decision or whatever. Some people, it's faith, or their sense of morality, or their sense of ideology, their political understanding. A lot of people, I think it's their career, which I think is a mistake. Because your career is not a reflection of you as a person. It may be a reflection of some of the work you've done, but it's not you as a person. It can never be, because that's not what the system is designed for. It's not designed for the realization of the self. It's designed for the indulgence of the selfish on different levels. You want to watch a movie, you want some ice cream, indulgence, but not necessarily enlightenment, transcendence from the mundane and the unexamined. So you can't necessarily just use that as the only thing that matters to you. There's got to be something more compelling. Otherwise, that listlessness will never go away. That confusion, And if you don't know what that thing is, that's fine. I don't care how old you are or how far you are along in whatever your career, your education, or whatever, you may have to re-examine what that guiding light is from time to time. There's got to be something bigger that drives everything else. Because that's what'll take you through the dark times and through the confusing mess and the day-to-day grind and monotony and the just spiraling anxiety or whatever of the current moment. And it doesn't have to be so individualized either. You can have a connection to a culture or a community or whatever. It can be an interpersonal thing. As I think about what I want to do personally, and a lot of what I want to do, it's not something that I can just create out of thin air with my own bare hands. It's going to require other people. And it is enriched and enhanced by other people. That's also something to consider. Building connections with other people. I know it's more weird and more difficult in the current time. Maybe all you can do is Zoom with your friends or whatever, or text, or or stand outside their window and yell at them with a boombox over your head. But it's worth engaging in that realm too, and trying to, as you can, strengthen your relationships with other people. I've been relatively, like I said, I'll only talk to my girlfriend, not because I don't have other friends. I talk to some other friends too. And I think about calling some of my friends, but I'm like, well, they're not calling me. They're not hitting me up, so which is probably not great. I don't know. Maybe if I think about somebody, I should just text them or something like that. I don't know. It doesn't hurt just to build those relationships and try to understand what other people are experiencing in this moment. That is also another tool, or I talk a lot about, in the political realm, that most good things aren't they're not perpetuated by a single individual. They're a result of collective action. A group of people getting together and deciding the way this is being done sucks, and we got to do it a different way. Basically. The only way we can utilize that sort of strength in numbers concept is if there's something connecting all these people. You can't form connections with people if you don't talk to them, if you don't relate to them, if you don't understand them. So we need to use tools to understand ourselves, build ourselves up, and then turn those outward, understand other people, and build other people up, and come together and tackle projects that no individual can on their own. It's sort of like that concept of, when I was in music school, first I was going to be as music education, to be like a band director, which I didn't actually want to do. I was just doing it because you need a credential to teach in California. You don't need a credential to play music. So if you're going to go to school, might as well try to get the credential. Talking to people in education versus people who are in like the performing degrees, it was usually like, well, if you're education, you don't have to be as good in your instrument because you're just going to be teaching and you're going to lose your chops anyway. But my understanding and the understanding of other people was like, you have to put in the work now. You have to build up your craft now. Because how are you going to teach your kids how to get good if you suck? If you don't know how to get good, how are you going to teach anybody else how to get good? I'm not saying you have to be an amazing player to be an amazing teacher, but you have to understand something about how to get to that level if you want to bring your students to that level. So it's working on your own cognition and understanding the grind and how to think about things and doing the work yourself so that you can bring that to other people. I think in this case it's very similar. So I don't know, for me, I was inspired to talk to other people about what I was working on earlier on in the quarantine. But I mean, it's been weird, especially now. I feel like I'm like recovering, a little bit, because it's hard to focus on in this moment, because we do there is this sense that there's something, monumental occurring right now, and there is a certain feeling of you feel irresponsible if you're not constantly engaged with it. But if you're constantly engaged with it, whether that's like watching the news or, on social media, and you don't do anything, all you do is look at it, you might as well have not known anything about it in the first place, So, I mean, engage and understand and have empathy for the situation. Educate yourself about the context of our current moment with regards to Black Lives Matter, police brutality, poverty, the failure of our government to address a pandemic, other struggles. But if it's not contributing anything and all it is making you feel bad or whatever, or demoralizing you, then at a certain point you have to cut yourself off, right? Do something else. And I'm sort of trying to find that balance. I'm working on things that I want to feel relevant to the moment, but I want to understand that it's a long fight. If I'm in this, and I'm not going to be in this for the next 2 weeks, or 2 months, or 2 years, or 20 years, it's a long, long road. And this shit it's not gonna, the conditions weren't built overnight, and they're not gonna be changed overnight. That doesn't mean disengage, that doesn't mean ignore it, But it means you have to find a balance. You have to have something in your own life. There needs to be something for you. You need to have built up something, an understanding of yourself, a craft, some sense of meaning and purpose for you, a support network and things like that. Because that's what keeps you in it in the long run. You're just going to go all out right now and never do anything again. That's not that useful. So, figuring out the balance and the appropriate level of distance and connection to different things. And it starts with things that are right in front of you, and you can control. I can pick up my horn and I can work on something for an afternoon. I can write something, I could do this. It may not have an effect on anyone else, but it's something I personally, my own personal pursuit. And the practice of having that level of focus and commitment and that feeling of growth, I can expand upon into other areas, as long as I stay grounded on those principles that I mentioned. And those are going to mean different things to different people. But yeah, that is basically my takeaway from the moment. That is, what can we do in this moment? And this is not something to condemn or affirm any one specific approach. This is really just in my experience and what I think will be better for an individual in the long run. How can we make it through this? How can we endure? How can we get over these nagging feelings of uselessness and malaise and stuff like that? You gotta build something inside of you. And maybe even build something physically, like literally, you know? That doesn't hurt. Something you can concretely put out into the world. There's a certain power in that. Which may be sort of related to why, you know, I feel like the symbolic action of tearing down a statue of a slave owner is more meaningful than the symbolic action of making a post or something. There's a physicality to it, right? And it has something to do with your environment. But yeah, I think I've basically said about all I can say with that subject. I hope it gives somebody, at least, I don't know, something to think about, something to work on. And if there are people, like real people watching this, you know, I encourage you to try these things and to, again, educate yourself and try to reach out to other people, whatever your situation may be. If your situation is dire, look to your community or whatever you have, you know. But we have to make this work. This energy, this momentum that's going on right now, it's not going to go at the speed forever. But we have to capture some of it. And I think it starts on this very personal level. The spontaneity can be helpful, and it can drive action where, you know, decades of work haven't been able to before. But again, it's a long fight. And sometimes it's, you know, years and years of just pressing up against it, and then suddenly something happens where you just, you know, you can push it forward suddenly. But it doesn't happen without that constant behind it. So building up some sense of, you know, fortification, some way to be longevitous. That's how we keep it up. So I will talk to you guys again on Thursday. Again, I have no idea what it's going to be. I'll probably think of it the morning of. But keep an eye out. I'm hoping to have something out this week and possibly next week on YouTube and Instagram and wherever else. And yeah, try to stay safe. Wear a mask. If you got people and your friends or family who are wilding about it, I don't know. They're fucking stupid. And, you know, the culture war has spilled out into the realm of reality in the form of people, old white people, refusing to wear masks and getting into fights and shooting people and stuff like that. So, ain't that a bitch? But again, there's an opportunity here. Whether you're locked at home, there's an opportunity for you to do something here, or whatever it is, you know. Find the opportunity, make your peace with the situation, but not in an apathetic sense, in a sense that there's something for me here. There's something here that wasn't there before that I can make use of for personal enrichment and to contribute something to this world. So yeah, take it easy.